The cafe was buzzing with the hum of clinking cups, hurried footsteps, and soft chatter. But in one corner booth, time seemed to stop. An elderly woman with silver-white hair and trembling hands reached across the table, her frail fingers closing around the wrist of a young waitress. Her cloudy eyes widened in disbelief, her lips quivering as she whispered words that would shake the entire room. You have my daughter's eyes." The waitress froze, blinking in confusion. She was only 22, working long shifts to pay for nursing school. Never in her life had she seen this woman before. Yet something in the old lady's voice, raw, broken, desperate, made her heart ache. And then, as the tension mounted, the man sitting across from the grandmother, a powerful billionaire known for his iron composure, suddenly turned pale, clutched his chest, and collapsed to the floor. A collision of worlds. The billionaire's name was Richard Hale. To the world, he was untouchable. A man who had built empires, owned skyscrapers, and made nations bow to his wealth. But to his mother, Margaret Hale, he was still just her son. And now, Margaret was holding onto the hand of a stranger, her voice trembling as she repeated, "My daughter, my little girl." The cafe erupted in chaos. Some rushed to help Richard, others stared in confusion at the strange scene unfolding. The waitress, whose name was Emily, tried to gently pull her hand free, but the old woman's grip was like iron. "Please," Emily whispered, her eyes darting to the billionaire on the floor, "I think your son needs help." But Margaret wouldn't let go. Tears streamed down her wrinkled cheeks. "My daughter, she was taken from me 30 years ago. And your eyes, they are hers. The hidden past." Richard was rushed to the hospital. He survived the collapse, though doctors warned him that stress and loneliness were slowly killing him. But Margaret couldn't let go of what she had seen that day. She begged Emily to visit. Reluctantly, Emily agreed, out of pity at first. After all, the old woman seemed fragile and lost. Years later, Danielle worked as a paralegal. She dreamed of becoming a lawyer, maybe even a judge one day. She spent nights studying law textbooks after long shifts, determined to prove she was more than the limits society placed on her. But one evening, while walking home, her life turned upside down. Police stopped her. They said she fit the description of a robbery suspect. She protested, showed her work badge, even begged them to check the surveillance cameras at her office. But the officers weren't interested in truth, they were interested in power. They arrested her. Charged her with resisting. Threw her in a cell. Her dignity was stripped, her voice silenced. For 2 nights, she sat on a cold bench, replaying her mother's words, "You gotta be 4 times stronger." Chapter 3, Courtroom Humiliation. On the day of her hearing, Danielle stood in court wearing a borrowed blouse and skirt, wrists shackled. She expected fairness. She expected at least to be heard. Instead, she was treated like a criminal before she even spoke. When she tried to explain herself, a white officer shouted, "Shut up. You speak when spoken to." Danielle, trembling but defiant, lifted her chin and said, "I have the right to speak. I have the right to defend myself." The officer's face twisted with anger. And then, slap. The blow echoed in the room, as if meant not just for her, but for every person who ever dared to demand justice. The courtroom froze. The judge lowered his eyes. Nobody moved. It was as if the system itself wanted her silent. But Danielle didn't cry. She didn't bow her head. She whispered to herself, "They will not break me." Chapter 4, The Turning Point. What happened next shocked everyone. The judge, instead of ignoring the slap, slammed his gavel down. "This is unacceptable," he thundered. "Officer, step back." Murmurs spread across the courtroom. The officer looked stunned, as if he'd expected protection, not punishment. Then the judge did something nobody saw coming. He looked at Danielle and said, "Miss Carter, I have read your case file. I know your background. I know you studied law. And I know what has been done to you is wrong. Today, this courtroom will see something different." He stood up. Walked down from the bench. And in front of everyone, he gestured for Danielle to sit in his chair. "Take this seat," he said firmly. "Because one day, you belong here." The room gasped again. Cameras clicked. people whispered. The very woman who had just been slapped now sat where justice itself was supposed to live. Richard, though shaken, resisted at first. He couldn't bear the thought of opening his heart only to lose again. But Margaret's health began to decline, and in her fragile state, she begged him. Don't let pride steal your second chance. You lost your sister. Don't lose her daughter too. Something in his mother's plea broke through his walls. Slowly, awkwardly, Richard began to spend time with Emily. He helped her with tuition, invited her to dinner, and even let her see the vulnerable side he hid from the world. Emily, in return, didn't care about his billions. She cooked for him, teased him about his stubbornness, and reminded him of the simple joys he had forgotten. For the first time in decades, Richard laughed. The final challenge. Just as the family began to heal, tragedy struck again. Margaret's heart grew weaker, and doctors said she didn't have long. On her final night, she held both Richard and Emily's hands. Her voice was faint, but her words carried the weight of a lifetime. Richard, money can't fill an empty heart. And Emily, never forget, you are loved, you belong. Promise me, both of you, that you will stay together. Family is all we truly have. With tears streaming down their faces, they promised. Moments later, Margaret took her last breath, a peaceful smile on her lips. A new beginning. Her death shook them deeply, but it also sealed their bond. Richard no longer saw Emily as a threat, she was his niece, his sister's child, the last piece of the family he thought he had lost forever. He supported her dreams, and Emily in return gave him the one thing no money could buy, genuine love and companionship. In honoring Margaret's last wish, they built not just a family, but a legacy of kindness, proving that even broken hearts can find healing when love is stronger than pride. The inspiring message. This story reminds us of something powerful. Money fades, power crumbles, but family and kindness endure forever. No matter how lost or alone you feel, love has a way of finding you, even in the most unexpected places. Red Heart Call to Action. If this story touched your heart, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Backhand index pointing right comment below, what does family mean to you? And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel Be Kind Always, where we believe that every story has the power to heal, inspire, and remind us of the goodness in the world. Because in the end, we should all choose to be kind always.